want to throw you under the bus. Actually, why don't we just toss it to you? What's the most unpleasant job you ever had, Mr. Falcon?
Bag boy at a grocery store in North Vancouver, only because it's such a thankless job. Because when you pay for your groceries, that customer says thank you to the person that takes payment and is out of thank yous by the time they pass you as a bag boy. So it's a thankless job. I would say that was probably the worst, most difficult job I've had.
So you went from grocery bagger.
I was good, the best.
So then you went from that, and then eventually found yourself making $10 an hour in the call center at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, which, if none of you are familiar with the brand 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I mean, I think they're probably Canadian success story in the sense that, you know, when our mutual friend Cameron joined, they were at $2 million. They went from $2 million to $126 million in 6 years with no outside investments. And now they do about I believe, have multiple brands, and Brian is just crushing it. So when you started working for 1-800-GOT-JUNK, what was the roles that you held within the organization? And then what were some of your big takeaways for working for such a great brand?
So even before then, the first I was in business school in Vancouver, and I'm not an academic, so I struggled at that for about a year and a half, and recognized that if I want to learn how to grow businesses, I should probably go work for one that grew from nothing to something admired, and that was either going to be 1-800-GOT-JUNK or Lululemon pre-IPO. So I told my mom and my parents I'm going to leave university to work for a garbage company, and I'm South American, so they're very traditional. You go to school and you get married really young and have kids really young and whatnot, but I took this other path, and my first job was a call center agent for a year. And much love to the call center industry. I speak at some of their events, but it just wasn't for me. It wasn't what I was going to build my career around or on. And from there, I got promoted a couple times. I gave myself to my career in my early 20s. I worked my butt off, got promoted 5 times in 5 years, and eventually ended up into the operations department of the company. So at head office for 1-800-GOT-JUNK in Vancouver. And it was there that I found what I was going to leverage to build my career. And that's essentially 3 things: company culture, customer experience, and employee engagement, and how all those 3 work together to build an admired, profitable company, and pretty much everything outlined in the book.
And so how long were you in the organization for?
Just over 5 years.
And after your time there, is that when you started getting into advising?
Yeah, so I had the aspirations to grow this big experience design advisory firm in my early 20s. And I remember speaking to my manager, and he was doing my performance review, and he asked me something along the lines of, what do you want to do after this, or in the future? And I said, I want to build this experience design company for employees and customers and culture, and I want to advise for companies like Coca-Cola, and he, I remember his name, but I won't say it, but he was like, well, something along the lines of, keep your goals realistic. And I kind of just looked at him like sideways, like, mother, right? Like, you know, just because you didn't do it doesn't mean that I can't. So I left. And I called the name of my company Falcon Consulting Group because preemptively I thought there was going to be tons of employees and a dope office. Truth be told, it didn't get bigger than me and my dog. So, but the clients started off really small, like $2,000 engagements, $1,500 engagements, small retainers, and then eventually the first, big boy, big girl client that I got was Verizon Wireless. And I went from advising a $1 million company to a $100 billion company. I was like, I probably gotta figure out how to submit an invoice and write a proposal. And I might need a phone number that's not my cell phone. So I spent 2.5, 3 years advising, speaking, hosting workshops while I was still in Vancouver.
Got it. And this may sound overly simplistic. Well, how was the culture at 1-800-GOT-JUNK? I don't want to throw Brian under the bus if it wasn't great, but
I believe 1-800-GOT-JUNK was the godfather of company culture in Canada. They were talking about company culture in '05 when people weren't even talking about it. Best place to work in Canada in 2006. Second best place to work in all of Canada in 2007. So they were there early. So to answer your question, it was fantastic. Then the recession hit. And they went from, and this was great, real world experience that I could not have paid for in university. I saw the company go from $125 million in 1 year to 88 the next. And needless to say, there's rounds of layoffs, and I typically found myself not in the office when those layoffs were happening, so I avoided the 3 rounds of layoffs. And then the culture was different. It was kind of survival of the fittest. But it still was a part of the DNA of the company. But just imagine losing a great percentage of your company 3 times in a year and a half. Your friends that you've worked with, built these programs with, had wins with, had losses with, now they're gone. It was tough, but the DNA of the company, or the culture, was still within the DNA of the company. So once the market turned around, it was like pre-recession.
And this may sound like an overly simplistic question, but why invest time and energy into culture? And this actually kind of plays into the question of how do you get leadership to see the value of investing in culture? I'm on a crusade right now to help companies just by way of conversation, the book, and any way I can share a message that there should not be a divide between the relationships you have in your personal life as you do the ones in your professional life. And the example I give is that when I go home back to Vancouver on December 20th this year for the holidays, and I spend time with my mom, going on a walk with her or cooking her something to eat, am I asking myself, what is the ROI of doing this for my beautiful mother? Of course not, that would be psychotic. But yet, we still have that thought in our workplace. And if you bet on humanity, where if I do something good for someone, like we were taught when we were 6, that good things will come to me too, that is the bedrock of building a great company culture. Servant leadership is something that every single person, regardless of whether you are a leader by title or not, is something that we need to be studying and advocating. Servant leadership and benevolent leadership, those 2 things help build the foundation of any great company culture. So let me play devil's advocate here real quick. I love my mother. I don't look at her from an ROI perspective, but that's like a long-term thing. And when you have staff, you don't own that staff. And I know there's this big fear of what if I invest X amount into my team or what have you, and then some of them leave. I guess how would you address that viewpoint? So be it, right? It's just, if you're fearful to invest in somebody because they might leave you, then you already are in a divot. And I would question one's leadership if that is the case. I actually want people in my company to leave. If they want to grow within the organization and they want to be the director of XYZ department, awesome, let's do that together. But if they aspire to do something else, and I'll go even as far as compete with us by opening up a bar or a restaurant of their own, great, let's do that together. Because that's such a great representation of your brand. One thing that I am very strict on is language within our business. So we don't use the word staff. Staff is a term, is a German term to represent a group of assistants. I don't see our team as assistants, right? They're team members of our culture. And I'm not paralyzed by what ifs. What if I do something good for somebody and they leave me? Well, what if I cross Duncan Street and I get hit by a car? Does that mean I'm not going to leave here tonight? Might some people say I'm naive? Sure.
But if I'm wrong by somebody that I invested in, I can sleep well at night.
So, how would you articulate to, if you're not in a leadership position, but you understand the importance of culture, is there something that you would tell somebody to point to, or something to say specifically, or is there a way to show that culture actually does impact the bottom line?
Yeah, there's of course there's KPIs that you can measure, like how much you're spending in training and development, and if we're able to reduce our employee turnover, that is all cost savings that go straight to your bottom line. There's 3 things in the book that I outline, and it's one thing made up of 3, and it's the 3P strategy, and it's purpose. So understanding the purpose of your company, and I hope it's not just to make money. What is the purpose of our company? What is the purpose of our employees as individuals, not as staff or employees, as individual human beings? And what is the purpose of our customers? Once we're able to intimately understand what those 3 things are, then we can start building processes to enrich the lives of our employees, our customers, and our community, and the output is profit. I can't tell you when you are going to earn that 10x on that strategy or whatever the case might be. I can't tell you when you're going to do that. But if we look at companies that have come before all of ours, the ones that have withstood troubled markets, great competitors, they all have that people first culture built into the DNA of the company. And when I'm asked, what is the ROI of this? What is the ROI of that? The first thing I'll work backwards to what would happen if we didn't do this? So what would happen if we didn't invest in our employees? Now I can equate what that would be. Our employee retention goes up, our employee retention goes down, our customer turnover goes up, and then you can start equating those things, and I guarantee you those things will outweigh what's on the other side of the equation.
And for the entrepreneurs in the room, who here has an organization from like 1 to 5 employees? 5 to 15? Let's say 25 plus? Okay, so when would you, before we get into the tactical stuff, because you touched on the 3 Ps, which I want to dig into in a second, before we get into the tactical stuff, for those that have their own businesses, their own organizations, when should they start focusing on culture?
Yesterday. I'm going to believe that all your companies are going to have a huge 2019 that will bring you into 2020. And as your company grows, and if you neglect to put some of the cultural things in place now, it's going to be infinitely harder to implement and create culture within your companies. So it is yesterday. There are some I don't like spending a lot of money to arrive to an outcome. So I like to do things in a very cost-effective manner. There's a lot of cultural things that you can do within your organization that will help you gain momentum. Like, let's stop obsessing over Airbnb, a company that I absolutely love, or organizations like that. They're valued at $20 billion. Don't let yourself be overwhelmed by companies. Even, WeWork as well too, right? They started somewhere years ago, and look at them now. So don't be overwhelmed by these massive companies, and just start somewhere. Gain momentum, and then just start building. I have a rule of thumb in my business where it's 3 strategic initiatives every quarter has to be deployed, whether it's big or small initiative, to enrich the lives of our customers, employees, and our community. That's where we're at now. We started off with 1 initiative every 3 months. Right? So where are we going to be 2 years from now? Be at 5 initiatives, perhaps, but just start somewhere.
The one thing and we'll look back on it, that I even have this notion that culture is expensive, right? And we'll debunk that maybe, hopefully a little later. But you did talk about the 3 Ps, the first one being purpose, which I was actually surprised how much of the book you dedicated to purpose. And that wasn't even remotely on my radar. It's like when I think of culture, getting clear on your purpose, getting clear on your company's purpose, getting clear on the employee's purpose, and ultimately your customer's purpose. But if we moved into the actual kind of the process side of things, where does one start? Let's say somebody is started from scratch. Where does one start to really employ this like culture thinking throughout the organization? Is it a hiring process? Is it prior to that? Is it creating core values?
Yeah, it's difficult to give you a one-size-fits-all answer because each company is different. But you have to anticipate your growth. Let's all be positive thinkers and assume that our companies are going to grow year over year, and let's prepare for that growth. So you hit the nail on its head, is as soon as you start getting ready to employ or hire one employee, 10, or scale to 100 or beyond that, that is where culture is going to start to deteriorate. You are the ambassador of your culture, and you must surround yourself with individuals that will contribute to your culture and ensure that you do not hire people that are great skill set fits, but poor culture fits. And Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, says it best. He says, "We do not tolerate brilliant jerks because the cost of teamwork is too high." And like the first time I read that, I was like, oh, like that's brilliant. So the first thing one of the things that you can do is prepare for that growth and scaling up to welcome one person, 2 people, 10 people, and ensure that you're front loading the culture assessment to identify whether they're going to be a culture fit before anything else. And look, I know it is it can be paralyzing, where you're like, but this person has such a great resume. But you're like, but I don't like them at all, and no one's gonna like them. But they used to work at the Ritz-Carlton, or they used to develop for Amazon. But I don't like them. Say no, right? Like you wouldn't do that in your personal life, right? And then there are other little smaller things that you can do to be a great, benevolent, and servant leader. There's something I do called breakfast and jams, and once a week, I sit down with an employee and I have breakfast with them. And we jam and we talk. And often it's not about work unless they want to make it about work. And this is something I learned from you, actually. Just take notes on people. Pull out your phone. Like the amount of times I'll be in a breakfast and jam session for an hour and go to the bathroom is to go write notes about the person just so I don't forget it. So I'll pull out my phone and write a note section and be like, Billy's mom's birthday is on March 3rd, and so forth. But like the hiring stuff is very structural, but the breakfast and jam type stuff is very tactical. And like, please don't tell me that you don't have an hour a week. Right? Like, yeah, you do. And when I was advising companies, I remember this one CEO of this probably $500 million company. It was like, Michelle, I don't have time to do that. And I was like, well, I said, you're not that important. I got fired. That's okay. But yeah, nobody is. That's 1/40th of your week, of the minimum work week. So there's things that you gotta do. Some of the things you gotta do.
I remember one friend of mine made mention that she uses this gut test of whether she wants to hire somebody is would she, and she actually invites people to stay at her house for the weekend. And I actually used that for a potential business partnership. We went away to the Bahamas, and I was so in, we were so going to do this business deal in like a day and a half, and I'm like, I'm going to kill this guy. That's a cool like gut check. Like, I know like your core values on some level, but.
Yeah, and that's a great example, and I didn't know that you did that. You could also take people out, see how they treat the person at Impact Kitchen that brings them their food, or Portland Variety, or
yeah.
I'm naming every venue except my own, but
so modest.
So no self-promotion here.
No, well, it's one of those things I remember hearing a saying, and I think of it all the time. How you do anything is how you do everything. So again, going to a restaurant, seeing how they treat the servers, and that kind of stuff goes a really long way. And also, I'm very much in the hiring mindset right now because I'm looking for director of operations, and there's a great book called The Who by Jeff Smart and Randy Street. When it comes to a process around hiring and that kind of stuff. But
actually, I want to interject right now. You're about to make a massive hire.
yes.
What challenge did you have right now?
What challenge do I have?
Yeah, like is there any anxiety that you have going into this big hire? because I'm sure there's individuals in the audience here, so I'm going to flip the script here and interview you. But is there, because I'm sure there's many individuals in the audience right now that are about to make a big hire or anticipate that they will. Did you have any,
There's a reason I'm interviewing you on the topic of culture, because in my last business we didn't have great books and resources like this, or at least I didn't take time to read them. And we had about 25 employees, and I never focused on culture. I had B-level players, I had C-level players under them, and the culture was so bad that I would only show up to the office once a month. I moved to Niagara Lake, and I'm like, let this company crash and burn. It was like a $7 million a year company. So I'm still licking my wounds when it comes to that, and I'm trying to be very cautious with this new, mastermind talks and the new organization that we have. Director of operations is a scary hire because it's one of the key hires that you can make as an entrepreneur and as a visionary if you follow Gino Wickman's rocket fuel, his philosophy around that, and traction. And it's not a cheap hire either, right? So it's one of those things that you want to get it right the first time. Hire slow, fire fast is generally the rule of thumb. And when you're paying potentially 6 figures for a role, you don't want to wait 6 months to be like, oh darn, that was the wrong hire. Not only because it costs you a lot of money, but that was a lot of wasted time.
Absolutely.
So I'm pretty scared.
Well, you got me here.
There you have it. Well, I got to reread the book. I got my purpose. So that takes us through recruiting and hiring, which is where leaders kind of get it wrong, I'm assuming for the most part. And then you have emotional onboarding. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what that is?
How many people have, show of hands and raise them high, how many people have worked at a company as a team member, and on day one nobody knew who the hell they were, and their computer wasn't set up, and it was just a disaster? Raise your hand.
If you worked for me, that would happen.
Okay. So there's a lot wrong with that.
Sure.
A lot of companies will focus on the technical, like Jayson needs to have his lanyard and his login, and you have to invite him to Dropbox, and all that onboarding stuff. And this is a great conversation because my girlfriend's here somewhere, and she was onboarded in her company, and I was kind of sharing this is what onboarding is like. So that's the technical stuff. The emotional stuff is where pardon my English, but I'm a pig in shit. I'm so happy on the emotional stuff because I'm about to ask a team member, regardless of the position, to give themselves to a stranger, a customer, a colleague. So I must give myself to them first to show them that we're not asking you to do something that we wouldn't do ourselves, and to help them realize and feel what that looks like. So emotional onboarding is something that, and we can play a game right now if you like. What is an indulgence? So here's an interview question that we ask in our culture interview. I can play some of that. Either of you? Okay, well, I'm going to ask both of you, because you both pointed at the other person. What is an indulgence that you can't live without that costs less than $20?
We put that in our interview because of you.
Yes.
We would do that as our interview.
Okay,
And it
so,
works great.
okay, so it works great. Okay, thank you.
Fantastic.
So that didn't work like planned, but thank you for the confidence.
It could be a bottle of wine.
Okay, a bottle of wine. So let's say this gentleman is interviewing for a bartender position, and he says it's a bottle of wine. And I'm going to say, what type of wine? Red or white? He might say red. Okay, what type of grape? And he might say a Syrah. Okay, great. I'm going to write that down. Any type of brand, and he may say something. Cool, on with the interview. And a week later, we may hire him. And on day one of his first day, before he does anything, after a hello, welcome, we give him a handwritten card saying, well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us, because you have tons of options, especially in hospitality. So thank you for joining us. Not you're lucky to be here. So it's the other way around. And then there's that bottle of red Syrah, Camus red Syrah, or whatever the case might be. And then, this individual might say red Skittles, or Cool Ranch Doritos. Like we've heard a lot of stuff, right, guys? And it's cool because you have a group of 4, 5, 6 people all starting on day one, and they're all looking at each other's gifts, being like, hey, it's a great icebreaker. But not only that, there's always rhyme and reason for everything that I do. Not only that, you're about to ask these team members to go into training. You want their engagement to be very high because you want their knowledge retention to be even higher when they come out of training, so that they sell better, they market better, they're more efficient, and all this good stuff. But it goes back to serving others before you ask them to serve someone else. And that, at the core, is servant leadership. And again, if you're gonna take away one thing from this talk, aside from following me on social media, Google servant leadership and just get lost in Google and just click links, go into Wikipedia, and you'll get so lost. Like, have you ever been to Wikipedia, you click one link, and then another link within another one, and you have no idea where you are by the end of it? But that is emotional onboarding. Do stuff that is just different.
I think it's so important because, I've been an entrepreneur for 14 years. A lot of what you read out there is around customer experience design. Really focus on customer experience. And there was a question around how do you scale without losing touch, and that's really it. I mean, you care about your staff or your team members, and ultimately they will care about the client base.
Yeah, and it's you have to balance macro and micro stuff. So the macro are those big strategies that you're going to deploy every quarter, but the micro are those light, memorable touches that you do for your employees or your customers. Truth be told, I started my career as customer experience management being the thing. Then I soon realized there is no customer experience without employee engagement and company culture. I spend 80% of my time focused on what's happening internal to the business, because I know if we can get that part right, then what happens external will be taken care of, because you have this company that just has it built into their DNA. I don't believe the customer's always right, and I spend more time serving our team than I do our customers.
And the end result for you guys is so what's the industry standard retention rate for hospitality?
It's bad. I can't ever say a number off the top of my head, but think about it. I'm sure lots of people have worked in hospitality before. It's kind of one of those careers that you have at one point in your life. And retention is god awful. Right? It's so bad, but our retention rate last time I checked was about 2.5 times higher than the industry average. Now, I'm not so in love with employee retention as a metric anymore, because there's voluntary and involuntary turnover, and I want my team members to leave. I genuinely do. I have one team member that left last month, and I'm happy for him because he gets to start his own business, and that's what he is destined to do. So I wanted him to leave. We supported him, and I have another one leaving in 5 weeks, and that's going to be a happy time for me too. It's gonna suck shit having to replace him. Oh god. But put him first. And, so retention is not a KPI that I like to track. I like surveying employees and just asking them simple questions anonymously, and taking that data and creating operational improvement plans from there.
And that's the one thing I will praise you for, or honor you for, in the sense that I did behind the scenes tour of Borrow, which they should offer as a public thing, similarly to Zappos. And I was blown away at the onboarding materials you had. It was all just, again, where I've dropped the ball as an entrepreneur is I hire somebody, they show up, I forgot I hired them, and all of a sudden, and I have no onboarding whatsoever. And it makes total sense. We all have a deep desire to feel seen and heard and appreciated and valued. And there's an opportunity when people are most vulnerable to be their biggest fan. That's the time you make an investment in that relationship, when they're vulnerable. You can't think of a more vulnerable time when you walk into an organization. You're scared about the job, you're scared about who you're going to meet, you don't know anybody, those kind of things. So you make those little micro investments they pay off dividends in the future. And that's where I've screwed up as an entrepreneur myself for years. So,
And a lot of people have, right? And when I first suggested these strategies, I had one of my business partners like look at me sideways and be like, "That's fluffy, man." I was like, "So be it," right? So if you feel like I'm not that type of leader, I'm a bit extroverted or introverted, that's fine. But that doesn't excuse you from implementing things like that within your business. Find somebody in your company that can be that ambassador and that flag bearer for you. Because it's got to be a part of the DNA of your company. Like, look, don't just take it from me. Go study the Airbnbs and the WeWorks and so forth. And the commonalities they are doing these things. And I can tell you, you cooperated, it works. Though, the playbooks, I was told something early in my career that resonated with me forever, like to this day, and it's been about 9 years. People don't fail, processes do. Like, people don't fail, processes do. So let's say you have somebody on your team who's not getting it, okay? Billy's not selling well or whatever. That very well might be the case, but you hired them, or someone in your organization hired them, so it's your responsibility to figure out why that is. So ask yourself first, is it our training process that failed that individual, or is failing this individual? Did we set them up for success? Do we have module-based training? If you can say yes, our training is fantastic, then ask yourself another question. How did this person get through our interview process? Right, we're supposed to have safeguards, especially if they're not a culture fit. Right, you're supposed to have safeguards in place to ensure that great culture fits and high performers join your organization. Now, if you are like, both of those processes are very strong, then, consider offboarding them. But the question that I'm asked often is, okay, I want to build my culture. Should I fire 50% of my team that don't fit the culture? No, obviously not. Again, you hired them. You're wanting to build the culture. You have to give everyone the opportunity to live within that culture with your coaching, and then make the decision if they're going to fit within the culture or not.
that was going to be one of my questions. Is if you have an existing business and the culture isn't great. I mean, Tony from Roma was
I'm going there tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah, I'm
such a good
pumped.
tour. Such a good tour.
Can you give him the shout out?
So Tony Guerreri owns a company called Roma Molding, and he's a friend of ours, has a company up in Vaughan. They have 150 employees. Basically, they do frames, so like picture frames, and they're the second largest framing company in the world. And anybody here familiar with like Peter Lick painting or photos and that kind of stuff? They had a photo, for example, that sold for $6.5 million that his company framed and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, all that to say, he's super passionate about culture, and actually he came top of mind because one of the questions I had was that if you have an existing business with terrible culture, and Tony, for example, was a family business, so his father was like old school Italian and didn't care about culture. I mean, it was not sexy at all, to talk about culture, and he was taking over the company, and he had to let go like a third of the people. So I was curious to know, like, if you have an existing company, and you're already 20, 30 employees deep, 50 employees deep, what are the first steps to kind of turn that culture around?
Yeah, I would present what this culture is going to look like. Now, whether you do something like a vivid vision or develop a mission and values, introduce them to each individual one-on-one or as a company, and then doing it one-on-one. And then you're going to know, you'll know, if you know your team well enough, and I hope you do, who's going to fit within that culture or not. Right? You're going to have your ambassadors and your A players, and they're going to support you and help you grow this culture. But then you'll know, like, I don't know if these 4 people are going to make it. It's still your responsibility as a leader to allow them the opportunity to grow within this culture, because they very well might have never worked for a company where culture mattered. So it's not fair to them for you to exit them right away. And it is your responsibility to help them thrive within the culture. And it's a nice win. If you're able to turn someone around and get them to live within your culture, like I can tell you firsthand, like it's a great win that you can have for yourself, and it's a feather in your hat.
So who here has clear core values for their organization? All right, so this is a great place to step back to on some level, because for context, for my organization, I didn't have core values for the longest time. And actually it was with Tony, I did the tour with him, and he has 150 people working for him, and he's the sweetest guy in the world. And I'm like, you're so sweet, how do you fire people? Because I have such a hard time, and you're such a nice guy. And he's like, well, we have very clear core values, so if somebody is not in line with core values, we can just point to the core values. By the time they meet with me, they already know what core value they're not in alignment with. So I don't know if you have any structure you could share as far as how you identify core values, because 2 years ago, I'm like, I'm gonna get serious about core values. So I Googled it, and then I found this step-by-step, you need Post-it notes and Sharpies and a retreat. And I took my team out, and we're like, what are our core values? We put them up on the wall, and we voted. And then after that, we had these core values, and by Tuesday, I forgot what they were. And so how does one create those core values, and how does one keep them top of mind?
Yeah, so the first part of that question, how do you create them? If you are the entrepreneur or the leader within your organization, or soon-to-be entrepreneur, just ask yourself a simple yet really difficult question. What do I want this company to stand for? How do I want it to operate when I'm not even in the building? And you can just start brainstorming sentences and phrases, and you're on the right track if you're 3 pages deep of keywords and phrases. Then take a step back, leave it alone for a week or two, and then revisit it again and ask yourself, do these things still matter? Because as soon as you set your values in place, that's it. You shouldn't be changing your values. It's not like, what matters to me this year? So once you have all these phrases and keywords, I recommend working with a copywriter, somebody that can wordsmith everything for you. And whether it's 3, 5, or 10 values, like Zappos says 10 values, and we have 5, it doesn't really matter, because it's your business, and you can call the shots. But go back to them and say, is this exactly what I want my company to stand for? And from there, the hard work comes into play. That's the easy stuff. The hard work comes into hiring people according to those values, celebrating them when people win and live within them, coaching people when they're not living within them. If you go, and I implore all of you guys to do this, go to Borrow, go to Petty Cash, and ask anyone what our 5 values are. And my expectation is that they will be able to recite them. Hey Carl,
Oh boy.
what are our 5 core values?
Ownership. Ownership, humility, integrity.
Thank you. So, was that both of them that said that? All right. We have to know what they are and how they were created and why they were created and how can I be successful in them. Because if you're going to ask a whole team of people, whether it's 1 or 1,000 people, to live within them, they have to intimately understand why they were created, how to live within them. You can't just be like, here are 5 things, go. Like, what the hell are these things? Like, why were they created?
So 2 questions. Question number 1, how do you keep core values top of mind with your team? Or are some unique things that you do?
1, make sure that they know how to recite them, so that's already been mentioned. 2, we do something at 4:55 before service, and it's kind of a huddle. It's a pre-service meeting, and we talk about 1 core value every single week that we're going to drive. Right? So maybe it's ownership. You're like, guys, ownership is a core value this week. Who's going to do what by when to live within that core value, right? Have dialogue around them. If you have if you use Slack or a closed Facebook group for your company, make sure that you're celebrating people when they're living within the value. So for example, we survey our customers using Net Promoter Score, And if we read a comment from a promoter customer that says, Zach was absolutely amazing, I never had to ask him once to, refill my drink. Well, he lived within the ownership core value because he took ownership over the guest experience. We're going to take that and message everybody through Slack and Facebook company-wide and say, kudos to Zach for living within these values. Those are three things, those three easy, simple things that you can do. To add one more, if you do have those one-on-one sessions, whether it's a breakfast and jam or something more formal like a goal setting and review session or something like that, ensure that you go through your values and highlight the ones that they're living within, but then also target one that you feel like this individual needs to pull up their socks and they'll be like, I think you can do better in this core value, and here are some examples. What do you think? And give them some opportunity to talk about it. Those are some ways to be able to live within the values.
Beautiful. Awesome. I think we're at 10 minutes or so, roughly. Do we have any questions for Michelle?
Jason.
Sonny, you beautiful man.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen.
What up? Yo, Michelle.
Yo.
You can talk about the employee review board. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of benefit of that.
Yes. So thank you for being here, Sonny. I love you. He's the nicest human in the world and is the only person that has better hair than me in the city of Toronto. The employee advisory board. Yes. This might be my favorite strategy. We have many departments, dishwashers, hostesses, and so forth. So going into this industry, knowing that employee retention was very, very low because they don't have a voice often in this industry, I created something called the Employee Advisory Board, where there's one representative from every department is elected by their peers to join me once a month for an off-the-record conversation for a few hours. And the only thing that is on the agenda is the current state of our company culture, and for them to describe the workplace of their dreams. And my business partner and I, Brandon, take notes. What are we doing well so we can double down on those efforts and invest more resources into those efforts? And where do we need to get stronger? It's off the record. Managers are not allowed in the meeting. And we take that, and the reason why managers aren't allowed in the meeting is twofold. One, managers already have their own meetings. Two, I'm trying to grow that next layer of leadership, because if we scale as a company, we're gonna need more leaders. And I've seen leaders develop within the Employee Advisory Board. We take that feedback and then I immediately call a meeting with our management team and share this information with them that is anonymous. And it's really interesting that the things that I find out, like I have ears everywhere, right? And it's not to sabotage our management team, and I'll be like, hey, so what's up with this? And they'll be like, yeah, we're gonna fix that. I'm like, that's awesome. But here's the good too, guys, right? This isn't a reprimanding session. This isn't an opportunity for our employees to just air their dirty laundry. That's not the point of this. But a number of things come from this. One, those employees get to go home with a greater sense of purpose. Wow, I got to share my opinion. And it's worth noting, pardon me, those ambassadors from each department are responsible for crowdsourcing feedback from their peers too. So our next meetings are actually Monday and Tuesday. They have this entire week to go to their peers in their department and say, hey, I have my employee advisory board meeting, give me some feedback, the good and the bad. And they come and share everybody's opinions. Again, it's anonymous. But I'm gonna assume we're all really humble leaders, but there's a lot of value that is received from the team members when they go home and talk to their spouse or their mom and dad, and they're like, I got to sit down with one of the leaders of the company. So I remember at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, they did that to me. And it wasn't an employee advisory board, but they gave me a voice. And then on the ops side of things, you're gonna find so many strategies that you can use to create better strategic initiatives within your business to grow it. So that is the Employee Advisory Board. And it's highlighted in the book at length if there's more context that you need.
Thank you, Sonny. 2 more questions? We got the front.
Thank you for everything you said already, it's amazing.
Thank you.
So, I have a writing company, as you know, and so my question is, how do you champion company culture when your whole team is remote? I have like one person with me, but 20 of them
Yeah.
all over.
It's a very, very common question, and you have to be communicating on a daily basis and leverage what tools you have. So are you leveraging Slack or something like that to communicate with them?
Yeah, Hangouts.
Google
I don't
Hangouts,
communicate
okay.
with them as much as the accounts team does.
Okay, so you're the leader of the accounts team, right? You gotta be communicating with them more, right? Because they look at you as, you've gotta be the flag bearer. Now, if you have a layer below you that can help you be flag bearers, then that's amazing, right? Not a lot of companies have that. But so leverage the people within the company to be flag bearers. I have 2 people at each property that are flag bearers for me because I can't be there all the time. Ensure that you're advocating your core values. If you don't have them, create them, and then share everything that I shared before. But just top of mind, and I'm happy that you brought that up, Jayson, is just like always be communicating, always describe what and why the culture was built, and you've almost got to sound like a broken record. You have to ingrain it into the DNA of your company, and doing it virtually is challenging, right? Like I'm in an advantageous position, and I'm sure many people are as well too, because you get to see your team members all the time, and it's as simple as a fist bump or something like that, and it's hard to do that virtually. But there's emojis that you can show for fist bumps and stuff. But yeah, just communicate often, celebrate people, remove people that aren't within, even if they are virtual, living within the culture. But you got to be that person, right? Like they're not going to care as much as you are going to, because it's your business. But if they see how much you care, then you'll see an uptick in their engagement.
The virtual must be really hard hiring them because you're not sitting in front of them.
It is.
It's even tougher
It is.
trying to hire somebody on.
The writers are always going to be remote,
So hiring people virtually, yeah, there is, because you don't get to have that one-on-one conversation. But there's some pretty good software out there, like like video conferencing, like Blue Jeans and stuff like that. Like, believe it or not, there's a software called Blue Jeans. It's about asking the right questions. It's not the medium or the channel, it's asking the right questions. So if you have, in our business, we have 5 core values. We ask 2 questions per core value during the culture interview to understand if this individual is going to fit within the culture. So ownership is one of our core values. We're going to ask them 2 questions to understand, would this person take ownership over the guest experience? Foresight is another core value. We ask them 2 questions. So it's not so much the medium or the channel or the environment as the type of questions you ask to see if this person is going to fit within your culture.
We'll take one more. One thing I'll throw out there, there's a book called Remote. I don't know if you've read it yet, by Jason Friedman. So they own a company, 36 Signals or Basecamp, and they're about 45 employees, highly profitable and very driven, a full remote team kind of worldwide. So I check them out. One more question. All the way at the back, Jason Brown. All right, perfect.
I mean,
I'm having
so
coffee
you
with
speak a lot of ownership. Do you give ownership to all your employees?
So the question was, we talk about ownership, do we give ownership to our employees? As of today, we do not. Profit sharing programs are something that we're going to be looking into. Do I believe in giving ownership to employees? If it makes sense, sure. But I'm starting to see companies give away share packages to everyone. Like, look, just because millennials ask for something doesn't mean you have to give it to them. And I am a millennial, okay? I really like a lot of grassroots companies. Not to say that we're greedy, but right now it doesn't make sense for us to do that. But if it makes sense for you, that's your prerogative, right? And by all means, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I think there's in the entrepreneurial circles that I find myself in, there's this great debate, and there's pros and cons to either or. I think it's definitely a lively debate that I think we could have. With that said, I stole the mic. I will take that one back. Do we have names for the winners? Hot damn. All right. So we have, so who's for who?
Borrow, could be the first
Which restaurant's better?
That's an awful question.
Your favorite child, ladies and gentlemen. So for petty cash, we have Haley Rudolph. Hey-ho! All right, pass this up. Can you pass this down? I trust you. And then, I always get this messed up because of the French in me.
Stephen Dyer.
Stephen Dyer.
There you go.
There you go.
But booze and food usually draws a crowd, so that was good. I could ask or answer a million questions on these topics. This isn't work for me, so that's all my social stuff. That's my email. That's my website. Feel free to pepper me with questions after today. I'm good.
I'm gonna make an ask from you guys. If you grabbed a copy of the book or you purchased a copy of the book, I think Michelle would probably greatly appreciate it if you left a review on Amazon. Those reviews actually really do move the needle from a social proof perspective. So please do that. Also, how much do you normally charge for a speaking engagement?
Like 15 to 20,000.
Yeah, so if you want advice, it's free tonight. So feel free to ask him questions. He's around most of the evening. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, WeWork.